Hi guys, welcome to today's reading. So for today's reading, I will tell you a little secret. To decide on the topics of the readings, I usually do my own reading and try and figure out the messages, like the theme of the reading I'm supposed to communicate. So for today's, it felt like it was trying to communicate to me that a lot of people were stuck in, specifically in regards to career, in regards to work, or any kind of project that is going on for some people. So I wanted to find out why this message was coming through and what we can do to get things moving or get you unstuck. So that's the theme of the reading, basically what's hidden from you that you can't see, that's blocking you or making you stuck in some kind of way, specifically in regards to something that you're working on or want to work on. So these are the three piles that we have for today. I'll give you some time now to take a look at them. Just choose which one you're the most drawn to, and then we'll have the timestamps in the description, so when you're ready just head there and I'll see you in the reading. So if you chose this Two of Pentacles here, then this is going to be your reading about what you can't see that is making you stuck or blocking you in some kind of way. So straight away, obviously the Two of Pentacles is a card about balancing more than one aspect. So that can either be more than one project or more than one idea, more than one demand, like an external responsibility, or it can be about trying to, manage more than one idea or point of view on something. It doesn't have to be that though, it could also be the Two of Pentacles is about usually being flexible in your approach and being able to adjust things, move things, and keeping yourself balanced, but recognizing that that balance isn't a stationary kind of state. It's you have to adjust and move things around as demands change. So maybe it's about being too rigid, and that's what you can't see is blocking you. But we'll find out. So let's see. Okay, one straight away. I'm excited because at the end of this reading, I'm thinking about using a very interesting deck that I have that kind of shows stories like inspirational people in history. So we'll see which card comes out for you in terms of that, and we'll read a little bit from the book about what they did, and maybe it can give you some inspiration or an extra clue as to what you should do in this situation. But for now, let's try and figure out what this block is that's hidden. Oh, this is two. Right, let's try and turn some over. Okay. I'll just make sure I can see. Yeah. I think I'll put this. So yeah, it does seem to be a problem with regards to balance, because the Justice card also has the scales here, and also it's not just that. I don't think it's just balance. I'm thinking that maybe this is deciding on like a set routine, a set way of doing things, having like multiple things to do and finding it difficult to come up with like a system of sorts to deal with them. Two of Wands makes me feel like you already have a vision that you wanted to execute, because this is the card of, having an idea, dreaming something up, thinking about it, and planning it. So it feels like maybe there's an issue with how to do it there, because this card is the Chariot, in the traditional deck, card number 7. So I'm getting the sense that there is like a strong idea here, like a strong vision for the future or for this project that you have in your work, but there's a difficulty with knowing exactly how to maneuver the Chariot and how to bring it to life, bring it into the world, bring it forth instead of just having it in your head. Let's see more. So I can make this a bit easier to see. Yeah. So Ace of Wands coming through again shows me that again it is a very like strong idea. You are very excited and motivated with regards to this. There's just some confusion with how to move forwards with it, specifically how to bring it into balance in the material world because the Two of Pentacles is here. I wonder why specifically the Two of Pentacles though. Let's see if I can get more. I feel like this is saying when you try to calm down, a little bit and think about something deeply with meditation, being still, being more calm than there is in the previous energies here of the Two of Wands and the Ace of Wands. When that process happens, I feel like instead of getting solutions to how you can, the best way of executing this practically, it feels like with the Five of Pentacles, maybe, especially because this Five of Pentacles has like an eye in the middle of the forehead and the eyes closed. I feel like you foresee things that, because the Five of Pentacles is a card about lack, about being left with not many options and not much resources. So I feel like maybe when you try and contemplate this, Five of Pentacles energy shows up in the form of like fear or sort of beliefs about it not being fruitful, about it not being successful in a way. So that's definitely going to be an issue because if you already have a fear going in, then trying to execute something without putting your whole force behind it with the Chariot card here, which done successfully is putting your whole force behind something, whereas if you have fear stopping you, I guess that's why it's difficult to translate these like mental ideas and visions into reality because there's a fear that it's not going to go well or it's going to be unfruitful, lead to nothing, I guess. I'm still contemplating what this block is. That could be it, but let's see, get one more and figure it out. Oh, I just had an idea, sorry. Get distracted if I carry on shuffling. I was thinking as I was shuffling how I could piece this together, and I think it's maybe talking about how you might not realise, because again this block is hidden, so it's not something that you're aware of or that's obvious to you. So I feel like it might be saying that you have, brilliant ideas, brilliant execution, and you might not realise that you're putting these things off. You might be trying to be too strict and too ordered with how you want to translate your idea because underneath it there's a fear of losing, there's a fear of not doing very well with whatever this is. So instead of using the momentum to plan out and execute things in a balanced and I would say healthy way, but in a way that's effective, it's like being too strict and too rigid and delaying things and sitting and thinking about things instead of actually doing anything because there's no action being taken. I feel like the Chariot card or this Freedom card is being blocked, and maybe it's saying you need to give your ideas the freedom to come into the world and not be so rigid and so judgmental over them. Potentially, maybe that's what the block is, thinking that they're not good enough, so you end up just sitting and kind of contemplating them a lot rather than doing anything. So I think that's the case because we have the Two of Wands, Ace of Wands, and this, I think, is the Hermit card, but let me just check. Oh, sorry, yes, this is the Hanged Man, not the Hermit, which makes the message even stronger of, being suspended, being like in a state of just contemplating things and not taking any outside action. So I think this is basically saying you've got yourself stuck into a little bit of the thinking stage. And instead of thinking and action working together in harmony and flowing together, like in the regular Two of Pentacles, when the two energies are moving around together and thoughts are um, determining actions and actions are determining thoughts, we're just stuck, not moving anything. Because it's interesting, this Two of Pentacles isn't showing the movement that usually happens between these two coins, they're just both sat still. So I feel like that's what this is. I feel like it's talking about how you're too much in your own head, and that's what the block is, trying to be too ordered and too kind of like planning too much, thinking too much instead of actually doing, and being too kind of rigid and strict in the thinking, because the Justice card is, represents seeing things as right or wrong. So instead of being able to learn as you go or figure things out and move things around as you go, you're like, what is the absolute right approach to do this? I need to figure out the correct method instead of letting things unfold the way they will. So I think I have it, but we have room for one more, so let's see if it adds anything else. Yeah, I get the sense here, because this would be the Emperor. I get the sense that this is talking about being a bit too controlling, a little bit too, yeah, having too much of a grip on the plans and not allowing them to happen, being a bit too rigid. I was just clarifying the Emperor card here. With the Ace of Swords going out yet again, another energy that is not, grounded in the real world. It's all to do with thoughts and basically thoughts, ideas, things that are not tangible is what I'm trying to say. So the fact that we have the Emperor clarified by the Ace of Swords confirms to me that what I was saying about trying to make plans that are very rigid and trying to control everything and being very kind of, this is the right way, this is the wrong way kind of vibe to it. So I think that's what, as I've explained, that's what's blocking you. So I'll clear these cards and then we'll figure out how to clear this hidden block, this kind of strictness and holding onto something too tightly and not allowing it the freedom to exist in the world yet, because you want to execute in the absolutely perfectly planned and ordered way. So let's clear these out and figure it out. Okay, so let's look at the best way of getting rid of this block and allowing you to move forward. Let's see how we can do that. In case they want to be weird with me. So straight away so far, I was thinking about this card, which would usually be the Hierophant. And the Hierophant is someone who follows a religious order that has hierarchy and has like a specified system of beliefs that they also agree with and go along with, but they do things in a defined way. This is the way that we conduct this ceremony, this is the way that we worship this thing, this is how we express our faith. So the Hierophant would usually represent that kind of way of doing things, but this here is the Mystic. So that is somebody who does things, who still has, like a connection and knowledge and certain beliefs, but they don't really follow order too much. It's like they have their own ideas of how to express their faith or devotion or whatever you want to say. So I think the fact that this is the Mystic and not the Hierophant, and this is a section about how you can overcome that block, is recognizing that the prescribed way of doing things may not be for you. This Mystic is still someone of faith, but they do things in their own way. So I think it's saying that maybe the traditional career path or plan, you'll get to the same destination, you'll have the same kind of experience, but maybe you have to do things in a more solitary and a more individual way. I think that's what's saying, and I think it's telling you to trust that the same way that people who are, mystical would, if you talk to them, they wouldn't think they were any less of a person of faith than people following a more organized way of doing things. So I think it's telling you to have that kind of self-belief that your way of doing things is not less than or not less valuable than traditional ways. It's just a different way of approaching things. And it looks like, because here there's a book that has a key on both pages, it looks like you very much have the tools and the knowledge required to move forward and unlock things. It's coming from this kind of book, not somebody telling it to you. So this is about making your own mark, doing things your own way, listening to your own guidance, I guess. Temperance is the card of balance, which will address this issue we have here. And temperance is usually shown mixing things from one vessel to another. And it can be about, creating the perfect blend that works for you, the blend that works for somebody else, in terms of merging different responsibilities or different ideas together. May not be the same exact mix you need, and the mix of how you carry out your responsibilities today might be different than next week. Temperance is about constantly adjusting and constantly having things in flux, going back and forth and adjusting as necessary, recognizing what works and keeping that, recognizing what doesn't work as well and disregarding that. So I think it's talking about how to have a more flexible approach going forwards, and the way to do that is by, number one, not following prescribed rules on how to do things, and number two, kind of setting your own very, very rough plans, trying them out for a while, and then being like, well, that worked really well, so I'll keep that. But this thing I felt like I gave not enough time to, so going forwards I want to change that around and do it this way, and then trying that blend and seeing, oh, actually that addressed the problem, or oh no, I still think it needs fine-tuning a little bit more. So I think that's what temperance is saying here. How else can we try and clear this blockage? It sounds a bit strange saying it like that. I think the Seven of Cups is talking about, again, how I was just saying, there's not one prescribed way of doing things when you are kind of, I'm not saying you have to be like a mystic in the traditional sense, but when you're a person who has your own beliefs, and this doesn't have to be about anything spiritual, this can just be your own belief in the best way of writing a book, your own belief in the best way of studying, doesn't matter what it is. It's saying that there's options available to you. It's okay to choose different things. You don't have to be so rigid. There's different ways of doing things that all achieve the same result. No matter which cup this person chooses, there's life in it. There's things that are valuable in it. So there's not one right way or one wrong way, as we saw in the Justice card, because the Justice card is about there being one right thing, one wrong thing, but this is showing you that options are open to you, and in this case specifically, it doesn't really matter which option you choose, because there's a reward in each of them, there's lessons, there's valuable things in all of them. It just depends on which one you want to do, and maybe the one that you start off with, you might end up changing it, but that doesn't matter, that's all part of the temperance process. I guess it's about not being too afraid, thinking I'm going to make a mistake, as we saw with the Five of Pentacles, because that felt like the energy of being frightened to slip up and frightened to lose everything because, you feel like you chose something incorrect. So that's why there was a high level of not wanting to bring things into the real world, because you wanted to find the absolutely perfect way of executing it to avoid that issue. But the Seven of Cups is telling you there's multiple ways that this can be brought from an idea into a real tangible thing. There's not really a one right way or one wrong way. There's lots of different options, so you can choose whichever one you're comfortable with, and not out of a place of fear, but out of a place of that's your preference. And it doesn't matter if you change it halfway through with the Temperance, it's still going to get the results and the lessons that are required. Oh, I can't pick it up. So this is the Fool card, but with potential, exactly. This is really cool that it's a different keyword, because your ideas were shown to have a lot of potential. That was very clear in the last reading with the Two of Wands showing all the blooming garden in the future. It was trying to communicate that the ideas are very, very strong, but if they just stay inside of you forever, then they'll only ever be potential. They'll never actually be anything other than potential. And having potential is great, and it's like a really advantageous position to be in, but not if you never do anything with it. Then it ends up being those kind of people who, I'm sure everyone has done this at some point. It's like, oh, when I was young, I could have been an amazing dancer. It's like they had potential, but they never acted on it because acting on it would be too scary. So I feel like it's talking about that here, that you definitely have potential, but the challenge is now to recognize that and recognize that you don't want to waste it. You want to actually just choose an option and follow through with it, because you'll figure it out as you go. There is no right way answer, there is no wrong answer. So it'll become clear. The other thing with the Fool card in particular, because this is the Fool card, just renamed in this deck, is that it represents moving forward in a state without baggage, without hesitation. Sometimes it can be read that the person is being naive or being a bit, reckless in a sense, where it's like they don't see danger. You know how you have to, if you take a child outside, make sure you hold on to them because they just want to wander off sometimes and explore because they don't see the danger of doing certain things because they've not had that experience. The Fool card can be like that, but in this case it's being advised to you to be more that way. Be less frightened, be less afraid. Don't let fear dictate the path that you take. Use your potential and let it come out of you without being scared of the repercussions or the consequences. Let's get one more on this, and then we'll use the other deck to find an interesting story. Okay, this one it is. Oh, this card is back again, and I've learned this was the Hanged Man, so interesting. Maybe it's talking about the way to, because this, has been renamed to meditation, not the Hanged Man in this deck. And with all these ideas that are in mind, maybe it's talking about taking some time to ground and calm and to actually meditate in the healthy way and not use it to overthink and to have those fears and thoughts. Maybe it's talking about it's time to learn the actual way of doing this instead of, contemplating something to the extent that you get frightened and start being panicked. I'm going to get another card to clarify this, but I feel like it's talking about how maybe that's a skill you have to learn, because at the moment you can't do this kind of activity without seeing things that make you more stuck than free. So let me get another card for that one. Yeah, so the Queen of Cups clarifying it lets me know that this is about going inwards and reflecting on things internally. But the Queen of Cups is a person who feels very comfortable in that state. They are a person who is very self-reflective and very sensitive and has a very rich and strong, like, internal life and internal world. And I think it's talking about you have to use your meditation to explore that part of yourself, explore and get to know yourself and learn things about your internal world, not start to panic about the external world, as we saw in the Five of Pentacles. You need to retrain yourself that when you meditate or take a quiet moment, you actually use that time to explore your depths and parts of your personality and your internal thoughts that are true to you and are very rich, and not start to use it to panic about things that could go wrong in the outside. It's supposed to be a time to explore who you are internally and use that knowledge to guide your work forward, your projects forward. It's not a time to start sitting in silence and panicking about everything that could go wrong. So with that in mind, let's pull a card from here and we'll find the person that might have a story that inspires you. I'm not going to read the full story because they're kind of long and this reading won't go on forever if I do that, but I will summarize it for you. And obviously, if you have any other insights or you find it interesting, you can have a search. I'm sure these people's stories are widely available online to read about. So yeah, just warning you now, I'm not reading the full thing, but if it's interesting to you, you definitely should find an article about them or figure out more about them. So let's see, which figure could you take inspiration from right now? So here is the card and the person you can take inspiration from. I'm just going to quickly read the book and then I will give you the summary of why this person might become a guiding figure or an inspiration to you. So I'll be right back. So this card is Sojourner Truth, and when I was reading her story, it was very interesting and obviously very inspirational. But the main message that I think it was talking about is, while I was reading the story, it was talking about how she won a case to restore the custody of her child to her, and she didn't have any experience in that regard and became the first black lady to win a case like this. So throughout her life then, she was focused on activism, specifically the abolition of slavery, and it was talking about how she would deliver such impassioned speeches, and that's what she would dedicate her life to, these causes. And while I was reading that, it led me thinking to, you can have like the most noble kind of ideas of what's right and what's wrong and things that need to change, and you can be very passionate about that, like have very kind of activist energy, but if you don't bring it to forth, then it can't do any good. It always stays potential. So I was thinking about how if this lady had let her poor social standing at the time hold her back and tried to, and been self-conscious about the way that she spoke or delivered speeches and didn't feel that she was qualified to do so, who knows what would have happened. No progress would have been made on that front in her life. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that this lady, despite, the massive barriers that stood in her way, and despite being a person that people would obviously not assume to be capable of doing certain things because of her race and because of her gender. She didn't take those beliefs to heart and think them about herself. She still had a very strong spirit of activism and morally what is right and wrong, and was able to bring those into the world. So I'm thinking this is talking about how it's very good and very um, encouraged to have noble beliefs, to have great ideas, to have specifically in terms of, if it's an idea and that this is about you being an activist or wanting to stand up or make a change in a certain field, it's great to have those intentions, but unless they can be brought forward, then they're not powerful enough. So I'll just read you a tiny bit of the book, like the final part of the message. It says that Sojourner Truth demonstrated in her life that she was willing to take repeated risks for the causes and people she loved. Inspired by faith, she took action to live a life aligned with her passion for human rights, a life that she believed was her divine purpose. And it says, she's representing the Knight of Cups, by the way. The Knight of Cups represents someone bursting with compassionate energy. The Knight's appearance signifies a person who is capable of creating peace, love, and harmony for those around them. If you have a feeling that you're being called or directed by a spiritual power to do something, don't disregard it. While it's fine to be cautious, let yourself explore the idea of purpose in your own life, whether it is spiritually ordained or not. The Knight of Cups is guided by her emotions, instincts, and faith towards an idealistic, optimistic vision. What do you believe is your purpose? How does that mission improve the quality of life for your community? What actions do you feel called to take? So I don't think I need to elaborate there. I think it perfectly sums up this idea of having a very strong vision, a very not just exciting but very revolutionary vision, but the next step and what's blocking you is being too worried about exactly how to plan it out. And I get the sense that, you have to be a little bit messy and sometimes be an underdog, because only through exposing yourself to doing these small actions and only by making a series of speeches did the tides change for a lot of people. It's not like they came out and made one speech and everything was done. It's an ongoing process. So I think it's telling you to not be too worried. There's lots of different ways for you to bring the vision forward, but just get on with it and just take some action now and really look at what your purpose is here with the meditation and the Queen of Cups, and maybe use this time to make your purpose and your will even stronger by figuring out exactly what it was saying here, what you're guided to do, what your purpose is. So I think that's where I'm going to leave the reading for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I saw that you liked kind of the self-development style of reading, so I'll try and do more of those going forwards. And yeah, I hope something helped you here. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi guys, so if you chose this Eight of Hearts or Eight of Cups card, then this is going to be your reading about what's blocking you from moving forwards. So straight away, this Eight of Hearts in this deck, or Eight of Cups in a traditional deck, is interesting to me because this always reminds me of like this figure crying, and being upset about, well, traditionally the Eight of Cups would be about walking away from something, letting something go, but the fact that there's no figure that's walking off in a different direction maybe feels like an inability to let go of something, or kind of holding on to something so strongly because you think that if you let it go it'd be extremely painful and you would lose a lot. I'm going to figure out what this is, further in the cards, but my first instinct on this is the inability to let go of something is what's blocking you. But first of all, we're going to figure out what it is that's blocking you, and then we'll try and figure out how to fix it. Today is also interesting because I have a deck of inspirational people, and I've decided to use it at the end of the reading to see if there's anybody that, once we've read what the block is and read how to fix it, I wanted to use that person as maybe someone you can take inspiration from. So I'm excited to get to that part, so stay around for that. But first of all, let's figure out what the block is. Oh dear, so clumsy. Okay, we'll take these. Yeah, I do think I was correct in saying this is the inability to let go of something, because the Nine of Wands can be a card of absolute stubbornness. Usually this person appears a little bit worse for wear, a little bit beat up, and they're still like standing there holding the wand, still holding on like right to the bitter end. And sometimes that can be a positive thing. For example, if it's in a situation where reaching a certain goal or milestone is tough, but you need to hang on, and the Nine of Wands would be a positive thing. But because I just read this Eight of Cups as being the inability to let go, I feel like this is holding on to something so stubbornly, even though it's already, already run its course, caused a lot of damage, caused a lot of tension. So this Nine of Wands makes me think of somebody standing stubbornly in place and refusing to move from it. The Wayfarer, which would traditionally be the Lover's card, presents two paths, and that's also true in the original deck. And the Lover's card, if we don't take the meaning of, the later meaning of it being about love and all those connotations, which we won't go into now, the original was about choice. So I feel like this is referencing the card that's about choice, with it being the Wayfarer. So I feel like you're presented with a different way of doing things, a choice, but you're just staying exactly put, staying exactly where you are, refusing to move, even though it's getting to the point where you're tired and it's already caused a lot of issues and feelings of being worn out or overwhelmed, or a lot has already happened, but you're not going to move from this spot and definitely not going to take the other path that's being open to you right now. So let's see if I can get more information. Yep, this is the Chariot in the traditional deck, but here it's called Freedom. And this is kind of the opposite of what's going on. Maybe a part of you is desperate to get on the Chariot and move towards freedom, but the Nine of Wands and this Eight of Cups of inability to let go is making you stay stuck and not allowing you to experience freedom and choice properly, because there's a stubbornness that's not giving you a choice and not giving you any freedom in a certain matter. Yeah, the Fool card is representing, these two represent a very strong urge, a strong urge to experience freedom by getting on the Chariot, by moving from the spot where you're at. And the Fool card being potential in this deck represents, there's an idea that's started to form, there's something where you do want to escape from this kind of heavy energy that's built up in the past, something that was very tough. Maybe it's like having escapism daydreams and being like, oh, it'd be so good if I could just drop everything and leave it behind. But then maybe you feel guilty for thinking that and become even more stubborn and then upset about even having that belief, because maybe you put a lot of work into whatever this is, or maybe it just feels so emotionally painful to you to even think about letting it go or moving on, that you won't even indulge in this fantasy too much. So it feels like it does come out though, maybe when you get super fed up, this kind of urge to just drop everything and leave and move on and do things in an entirely new way, take an entirely new path with none of the baggage from the past comes out. But then this energy, this Eight of Cups, but usually Eight of Cups would be walking away and letting go, but because that's not happening in this card, I feel like the energy is there to do that, but you won't do it. So what's blocking you? But as I'm reading this for you, I feel like the urge to clarify something. When I was reading for myself what this reading was going to be about. Sorry, the wording is a bit confusing. I saw that the blockage that I'm supposed to address in all the piles was hidden from the person. What I mean by that is you might not even recognize that this is a problem. You might not even feel it that strongly. I don't want you to think that, it has to be something so obvious that the mere mention of it makes you cry. If somebody's like, oh, you should let that go. I don't want you to think it's the kind of thing where you have a visceral reaction like, how can you even say that, and go into, tears and panic mode. This can be a lot more subtle because it's hidden from you. Perhaps you're not even aware of it yet. Perhaps after you've watched this reading, you might have to take some time to figure out what it is that you hold on to a little too tightly and don't really want to drop. So I'm just trying to get across the fact that it might not be the most obvious thing. It might be something that requires a little bit of thought. It might be an inkling that you've had, not a thing where you listen to the reading like, oh yes, I know what this is straight away. It might take listening to some kind of more subtle ideas and spending some time contemplating it, because it does seem that it's quite subtle from the impression I was getting from the initial reading that informed this one. So just pointing that out. Blocking pile 2. With the Two of Cups, maybe it's something what's blocking you and what is causing this kind of stubbornness and inability to move. Maybe the reason for that is because at one time it really did align and you really did love it, but going forwards now it feels like that's changed. Not anymore. Maybe it's like holding on to, one second. Maybe it's holding on to like old energy that in the past was very fulfilling, was very reciprocated. As much as you put into it, you got back out of it. Because this could be, in a career that used to bring you a lot of fulfillment, and you sometimes get the sense that you want to just drop it all, move on, try something completely new. But because you've been there for so long and you've put in so much work, and it's taken a lot of emotional investment, and at one time you really did enjoy this career. Maybe it hurts to admit that now you don't really feel the same anymore, what you bring to the table and the amount that you put in, you don't get any satisfaction back from any longer. But I think that's explaining why there's an inability to let it go, because maybe you also think that, oh, you're just having a bad patch and it'll come around again. This Two of Cups feeling of things being in harmony, things being aligned with you, getting satisfaction when you put work into something, like working well with each other. But I don't really think that's going to be the case. But we'll find out how to address this in the next part of the reading. But I feel like now I understand why it's hard for you to let it go, and why you might push away these thoughts of wanting to start afresh and start again, because at one time it did bring you a lot of joy. But as you can see here, this is not in balance anymore. At one point it probably was, but over time it's shifted a little bit so that it's not how it used to be. So I think that's the reason why it's so hard to let it go, because at one point it felt really good, but it doesn't seem that way anymore, to be honest. It seems like just stubbornly sticking to it for the sake of it at this point, and because of past memories. But I was going to say something else, but I forget. Hold on. No, it's gone. If it needs to come back, it will come back. Let's just get another card and figure out what this blockage is. Oh, I remembered what I was going to say. Could also be a relationship, but when I was doing the initial reading that I was talking about, it looked more like this reading specifically was to do with either career or goals or personal development. I wasn't really getting the sense of that this reading was a love reading. I was thinking it looked to me more like a message for moving forward in career goals or in life goals. So yeah, but if it doesn't resonate like that, then maybe it could be. Maybe just for the majority of people it's career. So let's keep in pile 2 blocked and stuck. Oh dear. So I'll take this one. We'll also take this one. So yeah, I feel like the Ace of Wands is telling me that there's fresh energy in the form of these two cards here. This is coming in as an Ace of Wands, as like a very strong urge, a very strong passion to want to do these things, but then that's causing conflict within your own mind. So I think this combination sums up everything we were saying here about, there's a stubbornness because at one time it was good, and that's what's causing the conflict whenever this new idea comes in. So I think this just reiterates what I already read for you. So it's interesting the way this has come out. What I'll do now is I'll clear these cards out, and now that we've figured out what the hidden thing is that's blocking you from progressing, we'll put all the cards back, and then I will shuffle to find out how we can clear out this block and help you move forwards. So give me a minute and I'll do that. Okay, so now that we've cleared the first part of the reading up, let's figure out how then we can clear out this blockage and move ahead. Repeating cards. This also happened in the first pile of having a card that came out in the first part in the second part. The Wayfarer here, which as I said is the Lover's card and in this case is about choice, is presenting the idea that you have to make a strong choice. I'm going to get a card to clarify it, but the fact that it's come back again tells me that making a decision is paramount. Oh, exactly. Making a choice with strength behind it. Making a choice and committing to it, even if it's not an easy choice with the Strength card, it's showing me that you have to have conviction. You have to not just choose the easiest path or the thing that has been the case so far. The Strength card is showing that you have to have your pillars of beliefs and then choose something aligned with that strongly. So the Strength card also makes me think of, in the regular Strength card, you have the lion and you have the lady, taming the lion, if you will, and petting it. So it makes me think that sometimes when, in the previous part of the reading, when I was talking about having the thoughts of starting again and freedom, you might just assume that's the lion part of you acting out, and you don't listen to it. You're just hush now, don't start, don't cause me any sort of conflict and anguish. But the Strength card is about working in tandem with those parts of oneself and listening to them to an appropriate degree. So I feel like it's talking about don't shame those parts of yourself and don't think that they're wrong, and don't think it's just, a part of you that is undeveloped and is trying to cause or stir drama or make things difficult, because it's actually supposed to inspire you to make a different decision and choose something and stick to it strongly with your own strength and your own beliefs. So yeah, a decision definitely has to be made, and it might be one that requires a little bit of, talking to oneself first, come on, I got this, it's going to be okay, we'll figure it out. And it might be something that requires you to recognize how strong and capable you are first, so that you don't choose a decision that's easier out of fear, or choose an option that's easier out of fear, sorry. But there's no delay in that. There's definitely a decision that needs to be made this way or this way. Three of Cups. Let's see what else. I think the Three of Cups is talking about how important your own happiness and joy is to this. Not always making, not, how can I say? Because sometimes we can think of happiness, and specifically this kind of Three of Cups, joyful, camaraderie and fun times. We can think of that as quite superficial and unimportant energy. Oh, you shouldn't really factor that into things because it's fleeting, it's temporary. But at the end of the day, I think it's telling you to not disregard the importance of just having light-hearted and fun time in life. It doesn't always have to be Nine of Wands, which is, struggling through something, having to stand there and endure certain things. I think it's talking about there sometimes can be too much of an emphasis on how noble it is to stick around in certain situations or to persevere, which in some cases it is very noble and is the right thing to do to persevere, but I think sometimes we go to extremes and prioritize that over actual enjoyment of life. So I think it's telling you to consider the enjoyment of your own life and the parts of it that are fun. That is equally as important as being, a person who is determined and resilient. It's not a lesser emotion to also be a person who has a life that they've constructed to have fun in there. It's equally as valid component. It's not a lesser emotion. It's like you don't have to make decisions. You can sometimes make decisions for your own happiness and for your own enjoyment, not because you're like, oh, the correct or the right thing to do or the most impressive thing to do would be this. Sometimes you just do have to take into account what would bring you happiness and joy and fun. Oh my gosh, I dropped my cards. Hold on. So what, do I want to take all of these? I mean, it feels like that. Oh, you can't really see some of these. Hold on. Okay, that's better. So what did we get come out? The Six of Wands, the Nymph of Pentacles, and Chance. I just want to double check that this Nymph of Pentacles is the Page of Pentacles, because in the previous pile I was sure that a certain card was like a rewritten version of something else, but it wasn't, so let me just check that first. Yeah, I just looked and the Nymph is the Page of Pentacles, so just checking I was on the right idea before I started to read that. So the question I asked was how you could become unstuck or unblock this energy. I think Six of Wands is strongly believe in yourself and your like champion of spirit. So maybe you get defensive with the Nine of Wands because you're staying there and unwilling to let things go with this Eight of Cups because you don't really strongly believe in yourself, in the believe that you're the kind of person who's capable of taking a big decision, believe in that, because these people have confidence. Six of Wands are people who win, who get a lot of acclaim and recognition, so they're very, very confident people. So I feel like it's telling you that you too can also be victorious and win things, and I'm not saying public recognition for everyone, but you are capable of that, definitely. But it feels like with the Nine of Wands, maybe you view yourself as having to be kind of like a self-sacrificing person for the rest of your life, not get any of the glory, but just be that person who makes all the sacrifices and is kind of the person who is overlooked in a sense. So it's telling you that that's not the case whatsoever. The Page of Pentacles makes me think of stepping into like a decision and then having to figure it out as you go. So with Strength card underneath it as well, as I was explaining, that it might take a little bit of conviction and like pushing, but instead of pushing in the wrong place as you are in the Nine of Wands and being stubborn about staying exactly as you are, it's like you can use that kind of force in a healthy way in the Strength card to, even though you're a beginner, just follow through with things anyway, because the knowledge will come with time. This card is about exploration as well, so that's why I get the strong hint, especially here, because we were seeing that there was a decision to be made between two paths. It sounds crazy, but if you know the poem, you'll know which one I mean. The one that's talking about the road less travelled. This makes me think of the Page of Pentacles, doing something and going out and exploring things that other people might not necessarily explore, and getting into not getting into too much thinking about the finer details, but experiencing things and figuring it out from there, figuring it out from one's own experiences. And the fact we have the Wheel of Fortune as the chance card, I think this is a very, very strong encouragement to take a chance on something, to be a little bit more risky than you would to do something where it might seem a little bit unbelievable, but take the chance. I feel that that's what's being communicated here strongly, because you're going to end up in a successful position, you're going to end up winning, but you'll never figure that out if you won't take the chance and take this decision. And, hold your breath a little bit with the strength card, put your name in the hat, do whatever it is, and then be like, okay, I did it. That takes a little bit of strength to do, because it's not the most comfortable when you take a risk or do something new, but you definitely have that in your possession. So that's what I see from this portion of the reading. I'm going to now use the deck that I was excited about, that's going to tell us the life story and the lessons we can learn from a certain figure in history. My hope is that it'll have like a story that's inspirational and applies to your situation. But because the book is super long and the story is very detailed, I'm going to shuffle and find out who it is, read the story myself off camera, and then I will come back and give you the bits that are applicable, the highlights, if you will. But if you're interested in the person, then definitely, and you want to know more about them, definitely look them up, on the internet and research about them. But I'm just not going to read the full book now, because otherwise this reading will be hours long. So with all that being said, let's see who it is, and then we'll figure out what they're supposed to teach you. These ones are being stubborn. They were like this in the last pile too. Oh. Who do we have? Three of Wands with Henriette Delille. So I will get back to you. I will read her story, and then I will come back and tell you how it's applicable, or what I think the message is from this person. So be right back. So this lady's story was actually very interesting, and it was talking about how she was born into like a certain arrangement between her father, who was like a wealthy white male, and her mother, who was a black female. And it was saying in that society at the time that was quite common, that there would be an arrangement between the two until the male found, someone of his own race to marry later on. And it was saying that it was expected that when she was born, as she grew up, she would do the same thing. But then it was saying that she did not do that. She was quite a religious person. She wanted to join a convent, but they wouldn't admit her because she was a child born, out of what they saw as in not great circumstances. And the fact that she was mixed race as well, they didn't appreciate that aspect about her either. So it was saying that she took that and then started her own convent, which is still in operation today. It was made me think of how exactly it was saying in this reading here, how having like expectations in a certain way that you've always done things, or a certain pattern that's the norm, it does take strength and courage to break from that. And this lady had a strong vision of how she wanted to live her life, and followed that despite it not at all being what was expected from her, and being extremely unheard of at the time. So I feel like that message is quite obvious in how it applies here, because maybe this decision that has to be made is between something that's not very conventional or expected out of you. And the reason why you've been finding things so tough but still hanging on with the Nine of Wands is because you found it tough, because it takes energy to do things that are not aligned with you, right? If you have to study a subject that you don't really enjoy, it takes a lot of extra energy and effort than studying something else would. I've been through that, and I'm sure a lot of people have as well, so I understand that aspect. But also because it's all that you know and because it's what's expected of you, even though you're really unhappy, you're just willing to stand there and take it. Like, oh, it's what I have to do, it's necessary, even though that's not the case. But anyway, I'll just read a tiny bit of the book just to finish up so you can see what I'm talking about. It says, Henriette de Lisle subverted the expectations of her upbringing by devoting her life to compassionate spiritual work. Her efforts were rooted in her understanding of the enormous value of literacy. She sought to empower disadvantaged women and children by teaching them to read and write. Similarly, the Three of Wands represents expansion and new opportunities. This card's presence in your reading signals the arrival of a chance to do something out of the ordinary. You need to muster up the courage to move beyond your comfort zone and take a risk. If your plans haven't been going as you expected, consider shifting your expectations. You may be able to accomplish more if you do. When the Three of Wands appears, consider these questions. What opportunities for growth are available to you? In what areas of your life are you too comfortable and complacent? How can you facilitate your personal growth while being of service to other people? So I don't think we can end the reading in a better way than that. It pretty much summed up everything we've talked about for the remainder of this reading. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you enjoyed. I saw from my last reading that was about personal growth and development, that you guys enjoyed that kind of reading, so I'll try and do more in the future. With that in mind, please subscribe to the channel and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi guys, if you chose this, what are we? Prince of Swords, Knight of Swords in the traditional tarot system. If you chose this Knight of Swords, this is going to be your reading about what maybe unseen thing is blocking you from moving forward and making progress in something that you're working on. So straight away with the Knight of Swords, my impression is that maybe you're thinking about something too rigidly. And by the way, when I was getting the ideas for this reading, it seemed like this kind of element or block or thing that was creating an issue was quite subtle. So as I'm telling you these things, it might not be the most immediately obvious. You might have to spend a bit of time thinking about how it applies. So I'm just letting you know that some of these things appear to be good traits and are in certain aspects, but it might be just that they're applied a bit too strongly. And I feel like that's the case here with the Knight of Swords coming out. I feel like it's very admirable and it's a great thing to do when you're working on something in your career or in your personal development or personal projects. It's great to be in a Knight of Swords energy sometimes, because the opposite to this is not making any moves, not taking any actions and being a bit stuck. But sometimes the Knight of Swords can serve against you because they're so set on the goal and the way that they're going to do it. They don't really have nuance. They don't really adjust things or listen. They make their mind up and that's their mindset and they're going to go towards it. So maybe it's saying that you need to refine certain ideas and slow down a minute so you can figure more things out, and then you can continue to go quickly. Or maybe different plans or ideas are being presented to you either by yourself or other people, but you dismiss them too quickly because they don't line up with your judgment or your way of thinking about something. So it could be that that's blocking you. Maybe there's some good ideas or truths that you're missing out on. But let's pull some cards and get some more information. Okay, so straight away we have the Two of Wands. Yeah, I think the Two of Wands is kind of confirming the idea that this is about, a vision or a project that you're working on, moving towards. Maybe there's like a certain very strong stance on exactly how to do these things. Maybe you had an idea with this Two of Wands and now you're like, right, this is the way we execute it, off we go. But maybe there needs to be more refinement or more thinking done before we take such a strong stance, but we'll see. What I was going to tell you as I was shuffling the cards, but then one decided to just come straight out, is that at the end of this reading, this is going to be quite an interesting section. I have a deck that shows me inspirational people. So my idea was to get this part of the reading to figure out what the block is, then do the next part to figure out how to clear it, and then we'll end on the interesting deck to see if the person that comes out for you can maybe give us some inspiration or insight or show you how to do things. So I'm interested to get to that, but before we do that, let's do this first. So what's the block? Yeah, I think this is being a bit too stubborn. I'm still quite sure of that because we have here the witch in this deck, which would be the magician, and that is a person who is a very strong beliefs and very strong, what's the word? Not just convictions, but like they're a very powerful person. If they envision something, they're going to do it. They have all the tools at their disposal. But I feel like there's like too much of that energy here in that it's great to be that sure of yourself and sure of your own power. That is absolutely a strength. But maybe in this case, it's a little bit too strong because this Two of Cups is showing me that something is off balance because these two are not aligned properly when this person is carrying them. And the idea that I got is like you, with the Two of Cups, this can be about, love in some cases, but I get the sense in this reading that it's being like you love this idea of yours so much that maybe you're a bit too focused on the way you're going to complete it. It's like, when you see in like, I'm trying to think what movie it was. There was a movie I saw, but I don't remember which one it was, sorry, where it was about a group of writers and the person like adored the character so much that they couldn't take any criticism of them. Oh no, it wasn't a movie, sorry. I was reading about Jane Austen and I'm a big Jane Austen fan. I love her a lot and her work is very impressive. But I remember reading a quote where it was like she couldn't understand why people did not take to and were not as in love with Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice as she was. She was like, this character I've written is so perfect, which I agree. I really like that character, but I can also see why some people are not as fond of her. So I feel like all that to say, it's like when you have an idea that you love so much and you feel is so aligned and so good, and you have an idea of how you're going to do it, and you do have the means and the capability and the vision and the motivation to bring it to life, sometimes it can be a bit of an issue because you can't even, sorry, I've just noticed, you can't even entertain the fact that somebody else might have a lesser opinion. You're like, what do you mean? It's a brilliant idea. It's great. I really love this thought that I've had, or this character I've written is amazing. What do you mean? Like, why did you write it that way? Isn't it obvious? That's how it should be. So maybe it's about not being able to take criticism because I was thinking of that Jane Austen example, but let's see. Maybe if you listen to the reason this is a block is maybe if you listen to some of these criticisms, your idea, which does seem very strong and does seem very, very, I'm not trying to say it's a bad idea, it seems like it would be very fruitful and it seems like it's a very powerful and like well-informed idea, absolutely. But maybe it's saying it could be even better if, you allowed some more input to come in potentially. So what is this block for pile? I forgot. Yeah, I think that this is being confirmed here because I'll start with the Queen of Cups. Queen of Cups kind of people are very intuitive, very sensitive, very compassionate. That's the plus side to them. The problem with these kind of people is because they are very ruled by emotions, which is what brings them their gifts of being able to empathize with others and understand and help people. They are oversensitive sometimes and are quite like criticism stings them a bit because they are very sensitive people who have very strong emotions, which are a strength to them but also can be an issue. And I feel like the Two of Pentacles is talking about, remember I said these scales are slightly off, so it's not really like these energies, whilst positive, are not coming out in balance. I feel like the Two of Pentacles is telling me that because you are potentially somewhat sensitive to criticism, you're not able to be flexible with ideas. There's like one way of doing things, which is the way you want to manifest it, the exact vision you've had is how you want to do things, and you don't really feel comfortable adjusting things once you've had the vision, once you've, started to execute it. Whereas people who are more comfortable with being like this Two of Pentacles, they let ideas flow, they let energy flow, they recognize that nothing is 100% stationary, things can always move around and change. These people are okay with changes and movement, whereas it feels like you might be a bit too sensitive to that and find it uncomfortable and are not the kind of person who is able to go with the flow and adjust things on the fly. The Queen of Cups lets me know as well that you care about this project or this work or whatever is a great deal. So maybe that's why you're so protective and want to do it your way, because it is very personal to you in your own heart and your own emotions. So I can understand why that's hard. It's not nice being criticized on a project or a passion that you feel so strongly about and you have very good ideas on. Because don't get me wrong, it is telling you your ideas are very good. It's just that you're not very flexible with how you do things. What is the blockage for pile 2? And like I said, this can be a subtle energy. I don't want you to think I'm trying to read and the situation doesn't apply to you. You're like, oh, people tell me all the things all the time and I don't throw a tantrum. It might not be that obvious. It might just be that things get dismissed quicker than they should. Or if somebody says something, you're just like, oh no, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a full-blown tantrum like, oh, I'm so upset that this person would say that to me. It can just be a lot more subtle than that and can just not even register in your conscious that that's what's happening. So that's why I was saying you might have to think about it a little bit. Oh no, clumsy again. Well, yeah, you're a very strong personality with the Queen of Wands. I love Queen of Wands people, so this is not an insult whatsoever. These people are so like magnetic, are so do things their own way. You can't help but be drawn to these kind of people because they just have this life to them. They just have this really strong energy, very strong unconventionality to them. They're just they're very cool people is what I'm trying to say. So I feel like it's telling me that this is also how you are. Like you like to stand out, you like to do things your own way, you're comfortable in that energy. You don't really have time for other people's like opinions, but sometimes I think that's to your detriment. I think this is a wonderful energy to stand in, being, confident, being inspired, being the kind of person where people are in awe of them. That's great, but the problem is sometimes it translates into becoming too Knight of Swords, too ruthless, too not just offensive. I don't mean it like that, but whereas this is a person who can like stand up for themselves and knows exactly what they want and knows how they want to do things. This person can become a bit too harsh with it. Instead of being self-assured and assertive, this person can be a bit too aggressive with their approach. So I guess it's trying to say to you that, all the energies that you have are very beneficial for bringing projects to life or doing certain careers or having certain work streams going, but sometimes it translates into energy that's a bit too aggressive and that's what's blocking you. The energies that usually work to your favour, sometimes when you get oversensitive, you get too aggressive with how you approach things and you get too set in, well, I know what's best and I will not hear it from anyone else. And that is causing a slight block and not allowing a project that does look very beneficial in the future. It's keeping it stuck maybe in the Two of Wands phase instead of, which is having the vision, having the ideas. It's not translated yet into actual actions and into actual results. So maybe the reason is because you're a bit too headstrong, which again, we were talking about Pride and Prejudice before. Elizabeth Bennet is absolutely headstrong and that's what makes her an excellent character and that's what makes her, so loved to a lot of people. So I don't want you to take it as a criticism too strongly and be sensitive to it, because the reason everybody likes that character so much is her kind of taking no nonsense kind of personality. But even she learns throughout the course of the novel, right, that sometimes she comes on a bit strong. So that's all I'm trying to say. So I don't think she's in this deck, but it would be funny if she was and that was the card, but she's not in it. So one inspirational character I can think of that's illustrating the point is her. So yeah, anyway, let me clear up these cards and then we'll figure out how we can keep the energy that's your strength but address this block a little bit. So I'll be right back. So let's see how we can clear this block and move forwards. Whoa, that was interesting how it flipped out. Is it two? Five of Wands with Reclamation. I think the Reclamation is the Devil card. Let's check. Yeah, sorry that took so long. I decided I didn't know numbers anymore, but yeah, this is the Devil card, so you have the Five of Wands with the Devil card underneath it. I think this is talking about maybe addressing some of your more... Okay, so every characteristic can be imbalanced, as I was just talking about. So having a very headstrong personality is absolutely a strength in some regards, but it can also work against you, as we were talking about with the example of Pride and Prejudice, where, you know, it ends up being something that has to be tamed a little bit in the book. But anyway, the point that I'm making is it feels like instead of like having conflict because of this very headstrong energy, and instead of it causing arguments, I'm not just saying like with other people, but maybe with yourself, but maybe it does also cause tension with other people with the Five of Wands. You can choose to channel it in a different way. You can choose to keep your headstrong nature and keep your strong vision, but I guess through the rest of this we're going to find out how to not be completely overrun by it so that it becomes aggressive. So reclamation makes me think of, you know, when people take certain words that are considered offensive and they're like, we're going to reclaim that word. It makes me think of that. It's like taking certain traits that can sometimes cause an issue, but choosing to act on them from a more positive stance rather than, you know, rather than using them for destructive ends. This is talking about, yep, you have them, but instead of expressing them in this manner, which might not be the most healthy with the Devil card here and the Five of Wands showing the conflict, maybe we can take them and express them and reclaim them into being a strength instead of being something that causes friction and causes blockages. So let's see how you can do that then. So it's absolutely telling you not to lose those traits, but they just have to be channeled away from kind of shadow side energy, away from destructive energy. Okay, what's that? Hang on, I'll have to cover her up a little bit. That's the Page of Swords. I mean, I don't know how to word this in any other way, so please don't take it in a bad way. This reading is meant for, you know, self-improvement, self-development. Everyone has things. So this is the Knight of Swords, right? Prince of Swords. This, the Nymph of Swords, is the Page of Swords. I think it's telling you to get curious again, because the Page of Swords is somebody who's just discovered the element of air, the sword, which is thoughts, ideas, you know. The Page of Swords is someone who researches things, who reads about things, who is a very curious by nature person, wants to know everything. But sometimes what happens is, I'm sure a lot of people have been like this, myself included, when you're a teenager. Sometimes when you read a lot or look a lot at a certain subject, you then decide you're a bit of an expert in it and you don't want to listen to anybody's opinion. So I think it's talking about how you might see yourself sometimes as a Knight of Swords, like, yeah, I have the truth, I have the answer, let's go. But sometimes you need to come back to the Page of Swords energy and recognise that you don't know everything yet, that Knight of Swords, even though they're very strong in their conviction and their ideas, doesn't mean that they're correct. It just means that they very strongly think that that's the case. Sometimes there's more learning to be done with the Page of Swords. There's more things to find out yet. And you need to be curious again and not so set that you know everything. Like when I think of the way I used to speak, I mean, I wasn't overly rude, but the way I used to speak about certain things that I had no experience of when I was, in my late teenage years, nowadays I'm like, what was I on about? As if I knew anything about that. I hadn't even lived my life to a degree where I could speak on that with any authority, but I thought I could because I was like, nobody else has figured it out, but I've figured it out. So I feel like it's that kind of energy, which, a lot of people go through it. It's not like you're a bad person. It's just that sometimes you have to step down from the horse a bit and recognize that you too need to gather more information. And instead of using knowledge to become set in your ways and become stubborn and become kind of, this is the only way to do things and I know best, recognize that knowledge can also be used to research, to explore, to, if you're passionate about something, go out and learn more about it. Don't just decide that you're going to spread that news and that's going to be exactly how we're going to do things. Use the passion and the love that you have of knowledge and learning things to learn even more, not to dictate opinions and beliefs to other people necessarily. This reminds me of, when you have like a manager in work who still learns things and is still curious, everybody enjoys that person. The kind of person who doesn't necessarily need to know that aspect of the job, but still does it. That's kind of Page of Swords energy. It's not trying to say that you're not smart or you're not experienced or senior. It's just talking about being in the space to learn things and opening yourself up to learning more things and not being so stubborn with the fact that you already know. It doesn't mean, lowering, how can I say, like demoting yourself. It's not that. It's like some people who are very smart still try and learn more things. Again, I'm going back to Pride and Prejudice. I hope you read this book because otherwise these references will make no sense. There's like a scene in there, I'm thinking of the movie version now, where Elizabeth Bennet, after realising, she's like, I was so wrong about him when she's talking. I think it's when she's talking to her dad at the end about wanting to marry Mr. Darcy, and her dad is confused. He's like, why? I thought you hated him. Something like that. And she's like, oh, I was so wrong about him. So it reminds me of being in that kind of energy, the ability to admit that you're wrong sometimes, and the ability to admit that despite being a very intelligent person, sometimes you do have more to learn about other people or about situations. Not because you're not clever, but just because you haven't experienced something like that yet, or that person is slightly different than what you're used to, that project is slightly different than what you have experience in. So recognizing there's nothing wrong with being inexperienced and then going out and learning more based on that. This card has come up in every single pile, this Fool card right here. Again, yeah, I was reading a book where they were talking about the Fool card being representative of beginner's mind, which is a concept where in some situations it's better to have not much knowledge and recognize that you don't know as much as you think you do, because that's what allows you to approach things in a new way and learn things from a place of, you know, like well intentioned, wanting to learn things and recognizing that you don't have all the answers, and by doing that you're not making assumptions and tainting the material that you're learning from, because you're not bringing anything to it, you're letting it teach you, you're not trying to impose your will on it. So I think that's what the potential card is talking about. Be comfortable with doing things from a beginner mind again, and be comfortable with recognizing that even though you know a ton of things across a lot of areas, there is some places where the Fool card is the most relevant because you don't know them yet, but you'll learn them if you stay open in Page of Swords kind of mode. Oh, look, see, I told you it wasn't about losing your traits. The Magician is still there. Still keep your confidence, still keep your power, still keep the idea that you have that you're a very powerful person who can achieve things. It's not about humbling yourself, it's about recognizing which areas are your strength and your experience and which areas you can still seek more knowledge and more help in. But don't ever, even though you are in the Fool like, it's a good thing to be in the Fool card and beginner mind sometimes. That doesn't mean that you take that and apply it to everything. It's like, despite being the Fool, you're also the Witch, you're also the Magician. Those two things can be true at once. You don't have to be an expert in everything or a beginner in everything. There's different areas where different parts of these apply. I just want to clarify this Justice card to make sure I get the right message from it. Oh. So this would be the Tower in the normal deck, and obviously this is a Strength card. Let me look at this combination. See if you can. Let's put it on top so I can look at it. I think this is saying there's an energy to be balanced out here, in that Justice is about, with the scales here, actions having consequences, things being balanced ultimately in the order of the world, basically. And I think it's talking about how your strength and the balanced way of you applying this energy, the way that would be fair to everybody and fair to yourself, is using your very, very strong energy towards not just causes for good, but it's like you have the strength to be the kind of person who can change a lot of things. You do have that very powerful energy, and that is one of your major strengths in life and in work terms. You do have that revolutionary spirit, and it takes a person who had the traits we saw in the last pile of being very decisive and very aware of their own power to do these things. But I think it's talking about keeping those in balance, learning to use them for, for revolution instead of destruction, because this would usually be the Tower card. The lightning would come and destroy the tower, which in that case would represent destruction of things and using power to upturn things, but in a bad way. But when you change the meaning to revolution, it's talking about using power to better things for people, being the kind of force that's like a force for good, using strong energy to upturn things that needed upturning to benefit everyone. So I think it's talking about clearing this blockage by recognizing when what you're doing is powerful and to the benefit of the greater good, and when what you're doing is, acting out of, I would say, like, not just ego, but coming on too strongly and being too aggressive, but in an unbalanced way for your own ends, for your own means. I think it's trying to get you to learn the difference and the balance there is in being a powerful person, in that you can use it to upturn things, or you can use it to be destructive. You can use it to lead people and help them, or you can use it to overpower people, I guess is what I'm getting at. So I'm interested to see who will come out as the inspirational figure for your final message. So how I'm going to do it, we'll shuffle the deck, then I will read off camera their story, and I'll come back and give you the bits that are applicable, all the highlights. So first let's find out who it is together. So you have the Six of Swords as Marsha P. Johnson, so I'll just read this in the book and then I'll share with you what I think the insight is here. So I found, and this is actually a little bit mind-blowing, so I'm just going to read some sentences directly from the book of this person's story. So it says, remember I was talking about how you have to use your very, very strong energy because there's only certain people who are capable of having this strong of an energy and use it in a way that's effective for, as I said, transforming things and causing revolutions for people. So it's choosing to do that instead of being too destructive and aggressive with it. Here it was talking about in her lifetime she brought her lively firecracker energy to the LGBTQ activist movement of the 70s, 80s and 90s. So already when I read that I was like, exactly, it's having like such a strong energy, and I guess this is going to talk about how this person was able to use that to bring things forward for other people and cause, upheaval in a positive for change. And then I'll just read this part directly so you understand exactly what I'm saying. It said that Johnson could be perceived as the most marginalised of people, black, queer, gender non-conforming, poor. You might expect a person in such a position to be fragile, brutalised, beaten down. Instead, Marcia had this joie de vivre, a capacity to find joy in a world of suffering. She channeled it into political action and did it with a kind of fierceness, grace and whimsy, with a loopy, absurdist reaction to it all. So this is also talking about how she was a key figure in the raid at the Stonewall Inn, how she directly challenged the police in that event. It says that they saw her climb a telephone pole, throw bricks, etc. And I'm not encouraging you to do those things, but I'm talking about how having that kind of very strong energy that not everybody has, that not everybody could do, can be an absolute force for good. And I think that's what you're being encouraged to do here. Don't let it die down, don't lose it, but just channel it now into areas where you can help people and be less, how can I say, look at things that you can do for other people and don't just have like a very insular way of seeing things. Keep the strong spirit, but don't become too caught up in doing things in a selfish way is what I would say. So I hope that helped, and I hope you enjoyed your reading. If you feel called to read more about this person, I would definitely do so. It was very interesting to read their story, but I just didn't want to read the whole thing on camera because it would be so long. But yeah, if you feel called to, definitely look at this person's story. It's super interesting, and it might have even more messages that resonate with you. So yeah, until next time, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the kind of self-development style of reading. I saw that people wanted more of those, so I'll try and do more in future. So don't forget to subscribe for that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.